I think the fear is that they're going to stop making 2E products and just focus on making more 5E products, right?
I'm Nerdarchy Ted.
I'm Nerdarchy Dave. Welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds.
All right, so I think this is a kind of a big announcement that's going on here that we kind of have to talk about.
All right, so yeah, this was a big announcement, and I was kind of ignoring it for a while, and then it just kept coming up in my feed in different places, and it's a very newsy thing, and that is Paizo is now going to be creating 5e content. Converting their actual old content into 5e adventure paths, and who knows where else this may lead. And the reason why we don't cover this stuff a lot of times is we're not really good at getting videos out really fast and turning them around. So after listening to a couple takes, and I feel like some of the younger gamers who are newer to the hobby, or maybe they just started with Pathfinder and that was their entry point, seemed a little salty and angry. Not all of them, but some of them definitely did. And I feel like they're kind of maybe missing some nuance. And also, we've been around a while. We were around before there was a Paizo. We were around when Paizo, they were magazines. I don't know if they had the physical magazines or if they only had the digital. That part I don't quite remember. But they took over Dungeon and Dragon magazine for D&D, for Wizards of the Coast during 3rd edition.
Right.
And this is really important, because what that means is the founding fathers of Paizo actually had a close relationship with the people of Dungeons and Dragons back then. And a lot of times it's skewed as this competitive thing between the two companies.
And there never really was. They worked side by side for a little while, and when Wizards of the Coast decided to go in a different direction and released 4E, Paizo, kind of paid homage to the rule set that they, really enjoyed and played, and said, well, then we're going to go this way. And using, the open gaming license for 3rd, made Pathfinder, and then eventually now, Pathfinder 2nd edition, and have a very long history of making successful products and bringing just as many new people into the hobby through Pathfinder than, what was being brought to 4E.
Maybe. I don't think it was quite the same, but it doesn't matter, right? The important thing to know is I don't think there's ever been a serious rivalry between these companies, other than maybe professionally. Obviously the higher ups at hasbro may see things much differently than the creative teams, right? But it's a small industry. Everybody kind of knows everybody. So that the idea that there's would be an animosity between them, sure, there might be some between individuals, but as a whole, I don't think existed. But unfortunately, it did seem to exist amongst the fan bases, right? There's a huge rift in the D&D community when 4E launched. It was very divisive, and and also it was kind of bad for the hobby in certain ways. They moved in the directions that the hobby wasn't willing to go, and Paizo saw an opportunity to give these fans that were not happy about that what they've already been experiencing and getting. Now, I have my own ideas about that and takes on that, in the sense that it is kind of funny that they're you're angry that this company is going to make you buy new books. You shouldn't put up with that. Buy these new books, right? But that being said, they saw a need and they fulfilled it. And I've always thought Paizo has put out fantastic looking books. Mm-hmm. And not only that, just good content. Right. I moved to a point in my life where I wasn't as interested in that kind of crunch in my games, but I still can respect what they put into it. And, we actually, when 4E came out, we played it for a little bit, and we actually moved in a different direction. I didn't play either. Right. I think my brother, who ended up in New Mexico, is playing in Pathfinder games, but we ended up playing other systems instead.
Yeah, when he
non-D&D systems.
When he came back, we actually had played a handful of sessions of Pathfinder that he was running.
Yeah.
But it was a scenario where like that wasn't the game that we decided. We went away from D&D and we went and explored not only other game systems but other genres as well. But when we look at the core aspect of what Paizo has done here, they're not the first person to have a pre-existing company see that 5th edition is still the breadwinner and the big number out there, and they went and converted some of their own stuff into 5e as well.
Yeah, it is the elephant in the room, and it probably is going to always be, right, or at least for now, in the foreseeable future. Monte Cook Games, they actually went out and they converted, a lot of their stuff to 5e as well, and basically took the, I would say the spiritual successor to Numenera and incorporated that into a 5e product. And Monte Cook even worked on the 5e team, right? Like he helped develop 5e in the beginning, and then then he walked away and decided to do his own company, and we got lots of cool games from that. So a big company with a lot of name recognition, is already done this. So they're definitely, Paizo is definitely not the first.
And Arcana of the Ancients, it's a science fantasy source book that is available from Monte Cook Games. And, the primary writers of this book, are Bruce Cadell, Sean K. Reynolds, and Monte Cook Games, who were massive names in the 3rd edition community. So if you've been around for a while, you might, know those particular names right off the top of your heads. It's an avenue that is already done and already been successful. So, Paizo, I don't want to say it's a new thing or they're along for the ride, because it's not being done by a huge amount, but by big names out there. Sure, why not?
Yeah. So you actually have a bit of a write-up on the release.
So one of Pathfinder's most popular adventure paths will be reimagined for 5th edition. Check out Abomination Vaults 5e. Do you like mega dungeons? Paizo does. Adventure paths and sprawling dungeons put Pathfinder on the map, and no dungeon is as sprawling as Abomination Vaults. So when Paizo announced that they were updating one of their most popular adventure paths for 5e, it was good news for adventurers and dungeon crawlers of all stripes with the advent of Abomination Vaults 5e. This is one of those things that...
Where are you pulling that from?
So this is bellofsouls.net or belloflostsouls.net. Is where that's coming from. And, there's so many D&D players out there who absolutely, just love dungeon crawls. There's people who absolutely don't care about rule sets and just want to explore new writers and what have you. So, I only see this as something that's good for the hobby to have some new options. If you only like core material, this doesn't really... affect you. If you're not into third-party stuff, not a problem. But, if you like options and you want something, this is a win-win for me.
Yeah, so we're going to go into the pros and cons of Pathfinder making, or not Pathfinder, but Paizo making this decision.
But before we do, if you happen to like these videos and all of the awesome content over on Nerdarchy.com, why not come check us out on Patreon and throw us some support there?
As a special thank you, you'll receive 5e content for both players and DMs alike. We make monsters, NPCs, magic items, spells, feats, subclasses, races, you name it. We're probably making it over there. You can go check it out. There will be a link up in the description, not the description. There will be a link up in the cards, and there will be a link down in the description below. You can get a free Patreon sampler to check it out before you buy it. I guess the biggest thing from us personally is it doesn't really affect us much at all. And here's why. While we enjoy the work that goes into these products, we don't use official adventures, right? We just don't. And they seem to be kicking off with a official adventure path. Maybe if they take some of their other things and convert that over to 5e, that might be more of interest to us. But generally, when it comes to adventures, it doesn't matter who's making them, we might cherry pick some stuff out of there, but we're not running them.
This to me feels like Paizo's putting their toe in the water to see, what it looks like. And if it winds up being successful, there could be very well a team that just starts going through and looking at all of the mechanics of what they've got and how to pare that down, because we know that Paizo is far more, or that Pathfinder 2e is far more crunchy than what 5th edition is. But it could be very, very profitable for them as a company to say, look, we're just going to have this secondary team and they go through all this stuff and just, they've already got the art, they've already got the stuff written. It's just the mechanics that would need to be adjusted. But that could double the number of, books that Paizo has the ability to put out and tap into a very large, very, even continually growing, set of audience.
Yeah, before we get into specific pros and cons, the other thing too is I know many people that really enjoyed the Paizo adventures that were written for 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons. And even, the ones that were written for Pathfinder, and like us, like that's not their system of choice, but they would really love to run those adventures. So multiple people have clamored for different adventure paths, right? And, I think that those people will be super happy. And it also goes to show, like, the affection that those people have for the stories that Pathfinder would tell through their adventure paths. And, with that, let's get into the pros and cons.
All right. So, I guess the first pro is, and this is entirely on, Paizo's benefit. This is going to give them access to, as I said, a whole new audience. It's going to give them more money because they can produce with like I said, I'm guessing a small team of 5e converters that can take something where they've already got the artwork, they've already got the story written, and it's just adjusting the material to suit a 5th edition style campaign. So I imagine, as opposed to 17 attacks this way, all right, well, multi-attack, they're going to have, 2 or 3 attacks and, call it done.
Yeah, so essentially for the pros, there's like three areas. One is more money, which we've mentioned several times. And as you alluded to, for a small amount of work, they're going to be able to convert one product into 2 products. And I would say the third thing is brand awareness, right? Believe it or not, Pathfinder people, there are people that have never heard of Pathfinder, right? And they're playing 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons right now. And this is awesome because if you then put out products that targets that audience, maybe they initially get into it because they really love 5e D&D, and then they start playing it, and then they start looking deeper at the company making this product that they really enjoy, and that can cause them to broaden their horizons and check out Pathfinder, either 1st edition or 2nd edition, and Paizo as a whole, right? So they could build fans that they weren't reaching before, which then cycles back to the first pro of more money, right? More money because they also start buying the other books and products as well.
Indeed, while we are at our core, we play D&D. We have always been, for as long as we've been doing Nerdarchy, we've been a proponent for, playing multiple games. You should check out other stuff, not only to see what else is out there, but to see what kind of things you want to add to your table and to your collection. And, you never know, you might find a game that you like better. So with D&D doing a lot to bring in new people to the hobby, I think more so than what Pathfinder does, this is a nice, bridge to hopefully allow, as Dave says, to bring more people into that brand awareness. So they're like, oh, well, you've liked this, you've liked that. Well, why not check it out from this side? And, that whole cyclical thing. So I think it's definitely works. But let's look at it from the other side. What are the cons to this scenario?
All right, so again, we have 3 cons. One is ego, right? And this is the one that I see when I checked out some of the commentators from the Pathfinder side of things, and they literally said, I'm kind of salty about this, and because they want their game to be the best game and held up to the highest pinnacle, highest esteemed game that there is, and this feels a little bit like a crushing blow and a defeat.
When I've talked to people who play Pathfinder, now I'm not trying to make a grand sweeping gesture that this covers all people. But I know that there are specific Pathfinder players who look down on the people that play D&D, that, D&D is a kid's game, Pathfinder is really, where it's at, you need more skill, you need more this, you need more that. And, that's bothered me because, I've been playing numerous role-playing games for, decades at this point in time. But I've this ego of Pathfinder is so much better than the other games that is out there, is not just unique to, a few small interactions, but across many different things on social media and in person at conventions.
It's system agnostic, really, right? Like, it's more of an individual thing, that individual person is like, oh, my game is the best, whatever.
Right.
Insert X into my game, right?
Sure.
I've also seen where some people are like, as a GM, I want to play 5e. As a player, I'd rather play, Pathfinder. And I will say, like, to me, Pathfinder 1e, a lot of the more mechanical complexity seemed arbitrary. It's like, ooh, you get +1s or +2s, right? Like, math is not exciting to me.
Right.
Whereas Pathfinder 2e, having looked at that a little bit, I feel like, yes, there's more complexity and the choices are far more interesting. It's not just like a +1 or +2. Right. They kind of like tweak and change your character in more unique ways than the first edition did.
Right. And, those are all elements that I feel like, have the capacity to, build out and become something better. But we're not here to, kind of compare the two, systems. So another con is, for the Paizo, people and for the Pathfinder players is, what happens if the 5e products wind up becoming more profitable than the Pathfinder products?
Well, I think the fear is that they're going to stop making 2e products and just focus on making more 5e products, right? But again, like, part of the profitability thing is just converting what you already have. Like, they have a total backlog of stuff where they can recycle all the art and all the storylines and everything but the mechanics, and they just have to rewrite the mechanics. And I think that's kind of like the sweet spot. And then going forward, when they make one product, they're always just making technically 2 products. And also, like, I feel like, yes, it's a business, but also, like, as role players, RPG gamers, like, we have a passion, right? And I believe the people at Paizo have a passion for their game. I think they're proud of their game. They love the game they created. And, if 5e is more profitable, it means they don't have to make as much on the Pathfinder side to keep doing the thing that they love. Right. Now, if you just think they're greedy gremlins that just want money, then yes, this could be a real concern. But, throughout the editions, I personally have never believed that the people on the design teams thought that way. Corporations, yes, absolutely, but not the people on the ground making the games.
Even though Pathfinder is massive, it's got a very rich and very vibrant, community attached to it.
It's not Hasbro.
It's not Hasbro. It does not have the same pull that Wizards of the Coast has access to, because Paizo is just Paizo, whereas Hasbro or Wizards of the Coast is a fraction of Hasbro, and the number of other things that Hasbro does is amazing. So,
well, even within Wizards of the Coast, right? You have the D&D brand, but then you also have Magic the Gathering, right? Which is its own juggernaut. Like, even D&D doesn't really stand up to that.
No,
yeah. So that there's that.
And then the other con, and this is a big one, is this is absolutely causing a major rift within the Pathfinder community. The people who, there are some are afraid to admit it, but there are people who play both Pathfinder and 5e, and there are Pathfinder purists who absolutely hate this aspect that Pathfinder is, or that Paizo is looking to make Pathfinder products in 5e, and might just be a dipping their toe in the water to see how it works. They could have a grand design for, well, here's the next 5-10 products that we're going to just, convert should this work out. I just am afraid to see, what these people are saying and doing, when I don't feel it's going to actually hurt Paizo in any way. It's only going to give them a new source of revenue to keep the game that they've created, the game that they love, alive and well.
Yeah, like the other two, cons. Well, I see them as being cons that other people perceive. I don't see them as being really big problems. This third con is actually a big one because, like, we seen it in the the edition wars and the split between Pathfinder and 4E. Like the community rifts are real, right? They happen and they are kind of tragic and unfortunate. But hopefully, we can get better commentators on this. And I have heard some really good Pathfinder commentators who were like, no, this is a good thing for the hobby. This will be great for us as Pathfinder people. It's kind of funny, right? Like, we do a live chat on our live channel. And I'll ask people oftentimes, do you play any non-D&D games? What's your favorite non-D&D game? Or what's a non-D&D game you want to try? And they're like, I want to check out Pathfinder 2E. And I kind of chuckle. Because I don't think we see that as not being a non-D&D game. To us, it's just another version of D&D, right? And if someone said the same thing from if they play Pathfinder, I want to check out 5e D&D, I would have the same exact reaction, right?
It's not a chuckle at, oh my God, you want to play Pathfinder. But it's, there are a number of fantasy role-playing games. So whether you want to play Dungeon World, Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, Pathfinder 2E, Shadow of the Demon Lord, or a number of others that are out there that I'm just not...
Numenera, there's tons of them. And even more so, for me personally, also Morkborg, we just played that last night.
We just played Morkborg.
but for me, even so, when I move away from D&D, my go-to usually is not going to be another fantasy game.
Right.
It's going to be I want to play a different genre. I want to do espionage or sci-fi or horror, or anything but fantasy, because I just play D&D if I want to play fantasy. Though we've played some other things.
Unless the system is bringing something new to the table. And I'm not going to get into those aspects. But so from that standpoint of, bringing, playing something that's not a fantasy role-playing games, because our viewpoint is, D&D is there. So this division amongst the community, I really hope that some people have the ability to kind of look at this, as not a bad thing, but as a source of revenue that is going to help out a company that is not getting as many new players to the hobby as Wizards is bringing in.
As a 5e D&D player as well, I look at it as a good thing. Maybe it'll push Wizards to put out even better content, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they're Paizo is out D&Ding us in 5e, we might have to step up our game. So I think competition is healthy and good overall.
Yes, I do agree. From that standpoint, I think there's a number of aspects. Getting back to some of those main points that you talked about, early on. With us not really caring as much about adventure paths, we'll kind of pick and choose. But should they decide? Because I honestly am not familiar enough with the Pathfinder catalog, but should they come and there's a monster book or a magic item book, those would be easy pickings for 5e players to be yeah, I'm going to snag that because that's just going to be new things. And there's a number of other companies out there that make those kind of things and do well.
They've sent us their stuff, right? They've sent us their monster books. I'm oh, this is gorgeous. I'm not going to ever use it, but this is gorgeous and well made. And I in some instances, I'm I wish 5e would make books this good. And in other cases, early on in 5e, when we were getting the WizKid minis, the Pathfinder minis were way better, made by the same company, right? It took them a couple years to kind of catch up and put out better minis.
Yep.
And hopefully that one of the things that pushed them to do that was seeing that Pathfinder was smoking their sculpts.
Yeah, and so if this only helps to, from each side can get better. Paizo can bring in revenue from the 5e 5e players, and Wizards can get their products improved because they're seeing what other people are doing within their niche. I think this is definitely a good move. I'm not super fond of mega dungeons, but I'll absolutely be checking out the Abomination Vaults, and I think if you're a 5e player, you should check it out. And if you're a Pathfinder player, just I don't think there's anything for you to worry about. Just kind of sit back and know that this is probably helpful for the company that you know and love.
So what do you think? Let us know. Share your thoughts and ideas with the Nerdarchy community below. Love it, hate it. You totally disagree with us, or you agree. It doesn't matter. Share it below in the comments.
While you're down there, don't forget to do all those fun things like share, subscribe. You know the drill.
Quick reminder, we drop new videos here on the channel Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, so come on back. If you can't wait till then, we've got you covered. There's a card up here for another video. We play other RPGs sometimes, and in this video, we talk about Pathfinder 2e.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.